Welcome to Expedient Means with Lin A. Wei on Time Monk Radio. Lin currently resides in China and is the founder and head teacher of Guizhen Philo-Cultural Society. He has extensive experience in Buddhist and Taoist meditation, Qigong, martial arts, and traditional Chinese medicine. To learn more about Lin, please visit his website at www.guizhenhui.net. This program is dedicated to exploring various facets of these teachings with hopes of making the knowledge more widely accessible. Thank you for joining us. All right, welcome, Lin. Today we wanted to discuss some of the common misconceptions and confusions surrounding Taoism and Buddhism, the similarities and the differences. And again, I know we've discussed some of these topics previously, but I'd like to go a little more in depth. And I'll start off with the obvious one that we've previously discussed, is that most people assume Taoism is obsessed with the body and Buddhism is obsessed with the mind.
Right. This goes many moons ago. These things have become misconceived, I guess. For example, we'll bring up a story about Tamo, Bodhidharma. When he had left the home life, the monk who accepted him, as the story would say, told him to go prepare the house. Go out and prepare the house. So Bodhidharma figured, let me go and make a hut. So he went out into a field and he tried to start building a hut. And as he started getting things pretty much together, some of the posts, some of the pieces of wood put up together a little bit, big wind would come and knock it down. And then, basically the monk would tell, the head monk or his teacher would tell another monk to go and bring him food every day. So, and then tell him what's going on. Go back and tell the main monk, what's going on. What is he doing? So the monk would come and give Bodhidharma food and see he's building a house. He's building a hut, spending time, days, weeks building a house. And he's not practicing. He's building a place to live. So Bodhidharma eats his food, and then he goes back and does it. And the wind comes over, blows it down. And then he starts building it again, and the rain comes down and soaks the whole house up. And he had it covered with leaves or branches and whatnot. And then it got soaked and flooded or whatnot and broke down. And then a hurricane came and blew everything down when he had it almost fully done. And the monk came back and says, I'm told not to bring you any food anymore. You didn't get the point. The head monk comes over and says, you lost the point. You didn't get what I was trying to say. I told you to prepare the house. He goes, I'm making the house, building a house, preparing a house. And then finally it hit him after that big hurricane came or something came and destroyed his wonderful creation of a nice place to practice. He realized it's not that I have to create a physical place. The house is this body. Let me prepare this body, but better yet, let me prepare the mind for this body. And then, that was that story. His realization was that the house really doesn't mean something separate from this physical body. It means the body. We are housed with this body. We are with this body. Comes from the mind alone. In Buddhism, we say everything comes from the mind alone. It goes much deeper than just what we can see or hear that sentence as. So we'll go into Taoism, and they're preparing the body. They are, in Taoist practice, you're cultivating Qigong, you're making the body healthier. The mind gets stronger through a concentration application to the methods you're doing, the methods you're utilizing. So it's kind of similar, because when I'm saying in Buddhism to say, go and prepare the house, I tell my student, go prepare the house, leave me alone. I'm going to go to sleep, you prepare the house. And he starts sweeping the school, I'm going to go out and hit him with the broom. He's not getting the point. The point was the body is full of obstruction. The mind is full of obstruction. Work through those obstructions, both become strong, thus you can cultivate even further. So it's stating the same idea. Buddhism, you don't see Buddhists doing standing practice out in the rain, Zhanzhuang, with the pile standing, though translated as, which is basically just standing properly, and practicing Qigong. But you would see that they would be standing with their hands together, legs together, slightly bent, the posture of their hips slightly pulled down, their spine erected, their head lifted up as though a string is pulling them from the top of the head, in a good enough posture that allows the chi and blood to flow with as little stagnation as possible, or as little obstruction as possible. That is also standing practice. That is also Zhenzhuang. That is also a Qigong posture.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Zhanzhuang because when I think of that, I would say it's almost as much of a mental practice as it is a physical practice.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Think of Buddhists sit in the full lotus or half lotus, and Taoists sit in full lotus or half lotus. Why? Why are they using the same exact practice? Yogis sit in lotus or full or half. Even certain practices of the Christian practice, Christian religion, I forgot certain sects of that, but they do sitting meditation too. So interesting. So here we'll just talk about Taoism. I'm not going to go into everything else, but Taoism and Buddhism. So you sit in the posture for sitting of the full lotus or half lotus. In Buddhism, we say the full lotus is likened to a golden pagoda. The half lotus is likened to a silver pagoda. And just sitting cross-legged is likened to a pile of mud. You know? And in Taoism, you're sitting in the full lotus. That keeps you awake. Or even half lotus, somewhat keeps you awake. And it causes the body to want to sit upright and get comfortable upright, though maybe hunching over a little and feel good on the back. But it's better to sit upright when you're in lotus. It helps the blood and chi move better, keeps the mind bright. So if the blood and chi are moving better, the mind is not fatigued. We see the same thing in Buddhism. When you sit in full lotus, you don't want to have the head hunched over. You don't want your back to hunch over. You want to sit up and gain some skill, gain some substance in there. Because overall, it's the chi and blood that move well, that keep you awake, and then your application of concentration builds up strength in the mind to focus, and that also stops you from falling asleep.
What about, I don't want to go, are you still there?
Sorry, 1 second. I'm in my office, so we'll have visitors once in a while come into the office. Excuse the background noise.
Did you want to hold off for a minute, or?
I think it'll be okay.
Okay.
It'll show a human side of our discussion. That things happen in the world.
Exactly. I guess one of the things I wanted to touch upon, I didn't want to go too deeply down this road, but would both Buddhism and Taoism tend to favor, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this, but not partaking in too much sexual activity.
Okay.
I was just wondering what you thought the reasons behind that were. And are the reasons the same in both Buddhism and Taoism?
Okay, so let's generalize the idea of not, we'll just say it straight out, not ejaculating.
All right, okay. You said it, not me.
Yeah, I said it. I have a bad mouth, actually. As a teacher, my students, when I'm scolding them or joking around with them, I'm a very, very strange man. I say things and make them go crazy. So, yeah, okay. So, in Buddhism and Taoism, generally, even if you're not a cultivator and you're a man, just we'll say on the man's side for a moment, then we'll get to the women's side. The man ejaculate. What happens? You're not saving yourself. You're not saving your energy, and that relaxed feeling, that feeling of effervescence, that good feeling, kind of lets you know something is missing now. Something is lost. You lost something. You lost your essence. You lost some energy. That makes you tired. Though people mistaken that as feeling really good. Actually, it's kind of like a small death. I'm sure this has been referenced before. Kind of like a small death that, okay, everything is fine for those few seconds afterwards, and you feel nice and happy and probably go to sleep all night. Depends on how old you are. So in Buddhism and Taoism, you don't want that. You don't want to waste your energy. You don't want to get fatigued. Fatigue is what takes your energy. Sleeping in both Taoism and Buddhism is a waste of time and a waste of your energy. People say, well, we need to sleep. Go ahead, go sleep 8 hours all day long, all night long. Then all day long, what do? You go out to work and you get more exhausted and you don't have time to focus on things that matter in the sense of your own personal, I hate to use this way, quote-unquote spiritual development. um, unless you're applying the principles you practice in what you do daily, then it's a different story. Then you're not really wasting your time. You're still cultivating. But sleep generally is a waste of time. And it makes you feel good in the morning. I had a good night's sleep, and I was joking about it, in our other show, slightly. Still, it's just, it wastes time. When a man ejaculates, he stresses the kidneys, stresses the testicles, the prostate, the bladder, urinary bladder, and the rest of the organs feel a shock. The brain feels a shock. And just put it this way, the whole body feels this kind of, we all know what it feels like. All men know what it feels like. So we're not going to have to go into deep. But that thing stresses the body. And it causes you to feel fatigued, causes more false thinking, and allows us, or has the cause for us to go deeper into attaching to sexual desire. So again, it's not that sexual desire is the evil. We say it is the evil in Buddhism because it takes our energy and focus away from other things that really can get us going forward. It really can get us thrusted into the states of realization. That's why something that takes your attention away is a thief. And we want to be a killer of thieves, not in the sense that we're actually mutilating some personal body, some physical body, but the thieves of our mind. We want to stop those things. So in Buddhism, you don't want to keep enabling the mind to attach to these desires that take your time away and take your energy away, throw off your elemental vibrations off. You don't want to throw them off balance. In Taoism, you don't want to waste that energy. I mean, if you're practicing Qigong, which is a general term meaning breath work, really, if we're going to look into this a little deeper in the terms of what Qigong entails, it's an internal practice and external practice. Okay, so we'll say Qigong is a general term just to coin the two terms together, put them two terms together, internal and external. So if you're a Taoist practicing Qigong and you're going out having sex all over the place, ejaculating everywhere you want to go, everywhere you go, you're wasting everything you just practiced for. You're wasting all that energy you started trying to refine. You started to, get put deeper into the body, into the bone marrow, into the bones, work into the dantian. You're wasting all that energy away. And that's not good. That's not good at all. So if there's a Taoist practice, anything that states go out and have all the sex you want, put your stuff all over the place. I don't think that's, I personally doubt that is very, very much in tune to the actual cultivation of the way. I mean, I just haven't met any Taoist monk. And when I quote Taoist monk, I mean those who actually just leave the home life and apply themselves strictly to just cultivation of what they're trying to attain. They don't do that stuff. They choose to take celibacy vow, and that vow is to stop them or help them stop their mind from attaching to sexual things, things that take their energy away. It may not just be sexual things. Lust can be for anything, generally. So that's where it is. They're both similar. You don't let yourself go because you waste your energy. A man has only a certain amount of times he can ejaculate. Not in one day. I mean, in his whole lifetime, there's like a storehouse, I don't know how much that actually is. Is it 6,000 times they can do it, and then all of a sudden they just totally wasted their essence? 100%, they get kidney failure and die. Something like that. Don't quote me on it. But it was a principle told to me by someone who followed another master, a very well-known master. So I just used it as another thing to a marker for myself. Say, hey, don't do that. Okay, because this guy said it. And the guy who said it, I'm not going to quote him because I'm not sure if it actually did come from him. I believe it did, but I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want to be hounded down for saying something the person never really said, if he didn't really say it. So anyway, it's just a good thing to keep guard of your jewels, literally the jewels, Keep your jewels in their place. Don't let them go, because then you'll be left on empty.
Well, I know one of the Taoist practices is that you commonly hear talked about or discussed is retention from sexual activities for 100 days, which I think is just general. I don't think if you go 99 or 101, I don't think it makes a difference. I think 100 is just sort of a number that was picked out of thin air. But my understanding is that you're trying to build up enough yang qi that you can take that and force that through your channels to clear out blockages.
Well, put it this way. Uh, when you don't let go of something, kind of like money. Let's liken to the men our sperm as money in a bank, a sperm bank, right? This is a money bank. Now we'll just use money as this analogy. If I'm using my money and barely saving any, or using more than, and then I have maybe 30% saved in the bank, and I'm using 70%. But I keep using 70% of what I put in the bank. Therefore, every month I put back the 70%, but then I use it again. I'm always going to have 30%. I'm not going to work on 100%. I'm not going to have 100% of my money. I'm only going to have 30% of my money. So in the 3 months, now we go back to the retention practice. In the 3 months of not releasing your sperm and your energy, not applying your mind to attaching to those things or to that feeling, sensations, etc., you are building the storehouse. You're kind of putting more money in the bank. And what happens at the end of the 100-day period, just for the sake of saying 100, you have a lot more than what you put in. You gain interest. You got interest on that money now. You gain interest on that energy. Why? Because you're not just holding back. You're building that energy. You're strengthening it. You're refining it. It takes some time. It takes time to get things done. And when we hold back on ejaculating, we are basically saving our kidney energy. We're saving stress in the body, so we save that energy right away. But what happens? People think, oh, it's not safe. I'm sure you've heard also, oh, it's not safe to have retention, to hold your it's natural to go and have sex, natural to ejaculate. Who told you that? I never heard that nonsense. Who told you that nonsense? I mean, I've heard it in the media. I heard it out there in public. I heard it in society amongst all those who try to cultivate. But who told you that? I mean, really. I was not born with the inherent knowledge that states I should go out and let everything loose. I was not born with that inherent knowledge. Why? How do I know I'm not born with that inherent knowledge? Because I needed someone to tell me straight off the bat, this is what you can do. Now, we're going to bring that statement I just did to cultivation. No, I was not inherently born with this knowing of a method to cultivate. Someone had to give me the method. Yes, that's true. But inherently, no, I had that. Everyone has a wisdom inside to know the difference. A true wisdom, non-discriminative wisdom. No one can tell you what that non-discriminative wisdom is exactly. They only can give you methods to get you to realize it. So I didn't realize. There's no way to realize you can go and ejaculate whenever you want. Someone has to tell you. It's totally in a different state. And there's people who are virgins up to I'm sure you've seen the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kidding. There's people who just don't have sex their whole life.
I
They
believe,
never.
well, I think Isaac Newton, I think he attributed his great mental prowess to the fact that he never ejaculated his entire life.
Wonderful, interesting. Well, because it's like oil on the ironworks, it lubricates your brain. If you let go of the oil, you get dried up.
Right.
So it makes sense what he's saying. But if you take someone who never cultivated anything in their life and they're 50 years old and never had sex, never masturbated, never did anything, they're not going to say, oh, I feel pain. Why do I have pain in my groin? Why do I have pain here and there? They're not going to do that. Why? Because they don't know that that's supposed to be a problem. So these things are really, we make a problem when there is no problem. Just because we have this attachment to having sex or having the ejaculation, we make it like it's wrong. Well, it's not wrong. You don't have that. If you tell any Taoist, full Taoist monk cultivating, whether he took the celibacy vow or not, he's going to tell you, save your essence, don't waste it.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down this path. I think we could probably actually explore this topic in another episode
Yeah,
more in
this could really
depth.
go very far and very in depth. So, but we just touch around the surface a little bit, cover a little deep, a few inches deep, and we'll be okay. There's a general idea that's stated, so it's good.
Okay, so maybe what we could do is go back in time and find out, where did this dichotomy arise between Taoism and Buddhism? Like, is it a historical thing? Where did it come from?
Well, okay, this. Let's just go. Let us go to when Buddhism came to China. As in record, also in the commentary of the 42. I know it's in Chinese. I remember the name, but I don't remember it in English. The 42 scriptures that first came over to China. This is Shishar Jiangjing in Chinese. I just forget it in English. I apologize. Well, this is in 67 AD. First Buddhist scriptures ended up in China, and it was basically the scripture in 42 chapters. There you go, something like that. Okay. It gets into China by two monks. I forget their names. I have them in my mind, but I can't get it out, so I'm not going to stress on that. And when they come into China, everyone's like, "Oh, these barbarians! Look how well they're dressed, like they're dressed like barbarians, poor folk, What the hell they got? They're outside religion, Wai Dao. We call it the outside path. They're not proper. So the Taoist monks are basically guiding the king. Basically you have the king is the emperor has a practice. He either practices Taoism or Buddhism or whatnot. At this time, it was Taoism. Excuse me. So when you got the Buddhist monks, two monks come in and bring in the scripture, the Taoist monks are telling the king, the emperor, hey, this is outside, this is barbarian religion, we shouldn't have this here. And the king goes, well, you know what, let's hear them out. Well, I say let's have a contest and let's burn the two scriptures. Let's burn our Taoist, one of the Taoist scriptures, and we'll burn the Buddhist scriptures. And whichever one doesn't burn is the true religion, is the true practice. Now, this is going to shock a lot of Taoists out there, and they're probably going to hate me for it. But what can I tell you? Go and research. It doesn't make anything better or worse. There's a principle stated in this next sentence I'm going to state. So they put the king says, okay, let's go. And the Buddhist monks are like, no problem. Now notice that, take note that this time there were about 500 Taoist monks and two leaders for them, okay? So you have 500 Taoist monks and you have two leaders for them. And the names are there. I don't remember the names right now. I apologize. But at a later time, if someone asks me, I'll let you know. I'll go and get my notes out. They burned the sutra. They burned the sutra and the Taoist text. As they're burning it, the Taoists are there praying to the three purities. They're praying to the immortals, to protect their text. Don't let it get burned. Trying to use their spiritual powers. These Taoists had great spiritual powers. They could hide in the ground. I'm also reciting from memory of the commentary from Master Shenhua. So, you'll have to research on your own. They can hide in the ground. They can hide in the mountains. They can fly through the air. They can disappear and reappear at will. They had all other types of power. So these beings were very well off, spiritual power-wise. So they're trying to pray and use their powers, their concentration, to protect their sutra, their text. The Buddhist monks are just standing there. Okay, go burn it. Whatever. No big deal. What happened? At the end, the Taoist scripture got burned. And the Buddhists didn't. Why? Once fire hit the text, the Buddhist scripture, as a story is said, emitted a great light. All the Taoists and their spiritual powers got subdued, meaning their spiritual powers faded. They lost their abilities. The scripture is burnt down. The Taoist scripture was burnt. Buddhist scripture was fine. The two head monks were so furious that they died out of anger right there. The other two Buddhist monks, they showed their abilities, flown through the air. They did what they did. And the 500 monks, the Taoist monks, became the first Buddhist disciples in China. Right then and there. And Buddhism became accepted in China. Why did that happen? That happened simply, and I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible. This happened because there was arrogance. in the Taoist practitioners because they had abilities, they had powers, and they did not want to get thrusted off their little seat of ability of power there, society-wise. They were in good power. They were right up there with the emperor. So who would want to get knocked off, you know? But they were greedy. They attained great power. They probably had some wisdom too. I mean, they must have had very great wisdom too. But they just probably weren't that far enough to let go of the view of a self, that they became greedy. Okay, and that was why their scripture burnt. Was telling them, don't think you're too high up there, you know, because you're so arrogant. Well, you know what? Just because you're arrogant, it's going to burn. Okay, so maybe the immortals sat there and go, you guys, you're pretty good, you know, and you got some good wisdom and good power, but you're dumb. What's wrong with you? Don't be like that. There's another cultivation practice that's going to be really good, and you guys can work together. But you know what? You don't see it that way. You're too greedy for power. You don't want to hear these principles. You know what? Forget it. Burn it. Make birds. Well, you know, that's what happened. As far as I have researched and read. Be my guest and read more. Those out there who want to know. It wasn't a battle between Buddhism and Taoism. It was a battle of principle. It had nothing to do with what was true and what was false. It was just principle. And that was how you had the first Buddhist Sangha in China at that time period, 67 AD.
It seems like even, you know, the practices are in a way, some have different focuses. For instance, Taoism, you seem to have a lot of qigong and energy and focus that way, but like Buddhism, the practices usually seem almost more simple. For instance, walking in nature, contemplative walking. Why do the Taoist practices seem more convoluted? Maybe that's a bad way to put it, but that's kind of my interpretation at this point in time.
I will say it's the game of telephone. I'm sure we all played that. And I've heard this phrase being used, you know, in normal, usual ways, you know, usual uses, but I'll put it to this one. Maybe 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, a practice was handed down, and then 2,000 years later, it gets embellished a little, you know, changed a little bit. And then people just put their focus in a different direction, utilizing methods that were there for a long, long time. If you tell a Taoist go take a walk, or someone who's cultivating Taoism or whatnot, or go take a walk in a garden or something, they're going to sit there and go, nature is so beautiful and feels so great, you know? Or maybe they won't say that, they'll just go through it and, quote unquote, just be. And then you get a Buddhist practitioner who walks through a thing, and you know what? It's the same thing. It's just the same thing. So if I'm going to sit there and do Qigong, standing practice on a mountain, from a method I learned in Taoist practice, well, it's no different from what I would do with the Buddhist practice. I'm going to stand in the mountain. I'm going to respect the mountain. I'm not going to cut off the trees and cut off the flowers up there, kick over a rock, you know, or mess things up there. Leave things be. Sit there and also just leave myself to be. And that's it. Stop the discriminating mind. That's the only way you're going to be realizing the way. If I'll talk in the Taoist sense, realizing the Tao, quote unquote, you know, people like say awakening to the Tao, awakening to the way, right? You're only going to do that by cutting off your discriminating mind. And it's the same exact thing in Buddhism. You know, you're a cultivator of the way, whether it's Taoism, Buddhism, or anything. There's ways all over the place, different types of methods all over the place. Which one is going to get you where you want to go? Some people like to make it go faster. Well, they may not have the capacity to do that. So they get stuck doing a practice in Taoism that they want spiritual powers or something like that, and they think they're going to get it right away, and they're not. Probably 50 years later, they'll attain something. And then the next lifetime, if they put enough practice in this time now, next lifetime it may carry over. And then they'll be able to build up on there. And maybe 5, 10 lifetimes after, they'll probably realize the actual fruits of that practice. That's how it happens. Then all of a sudden, they got their method. I mean, all of a sudden, they got their ability. Then someone else who sees them says, I want to do that too. And they think 2, 3 days later, or 3, 4 months later, or 2, 3 years later, they're going to get something. It's not going to work. You know?
One of the other differences, from my perspective, is that Qigong, you said, is breath work. It seems Taoism tries to cultivate practices that absorb energy from the air, from nature, from, you know, what have you. Buddhism, from my perspective, doesn't do that.
Well,
Is that, well, from my perspective, maybe it's wrong. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on that.
cool. That's actually many people's perspective too. Um, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's not an attack on you. It's not a looking down on you at all. It's just a question, and usually it's said with a little sarcasm, but I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm just going to say, we're human, right? We have a physical body. We have lungs, so we have to breathe. Yes. If we're breathing, we're pulling in air, and if we're pulling in air, we're pulling in energy. Right there, that itself is a qigong practice. It can be Neigong and Weigong. It can be internal and external right within that simple practice of breathing without even applying any type of focus of any type of method whatsoever. Why? Because if I'm breathing, I'm nourishing my lungs. That's my internal body. That's Neigong right there. I'm nourishing my lungs. Nourishes the blood. The blood goes throughout the rest of the body and nourishes the rest of the organs, right? That's Neigong right there. Simple Neigong.
But there's no intention. There's no intention behind it, though.
Because it doesn't need to have one. That's the thing. Our discriminating mind of thinking that there needs to be something that can make it stronger takes us away from actually making it stronger. Now, how does it go to the external? Well, if our blood is good, if our blood is circulating to the body, we're breathing, at least our body is getting nutrition, right? Bring the air to the blood, into the lungs, whatever, and it goes to the blood and goes throughout the rest of the body. Our skin looks good. Our muscles are strong, right? And we can stand up straight. So that's external practice right there. Very simple. When you apply concentration to it, then you stop thinking more. Haha, you invest in loss, as Master Cheng Man-ching would say in Taiji Chuan. You invest in loss. Basically, the less false thinking, the more energy you save. The more energy you save, the stronger, more vibrant you are, physically and energetically. Because you can't get vibrant physically unless you're vibrant energetically. So that your internal and external right there don't even exist because it's all one thing. So a very simple method of just inhaling air is your internal external cultivation right there on the spot. Once you apply application of concentration to it, simply just paying attention to your inhaling and exhaling. That simple thing anybody can do, it makes that much of a greater difference right away. Everything else happens on its own. And in Buddhism, we breathe because humans practice it. Even animals practice cultivation. We'll go into some other time. Buddhism, humans practice Buddhism. They breathe, so they practice Qigong. Taoists also. So, I hope everyone understands who's listening to us that when Buddhists apply their breath to their practice, meaning they apply a concentration to what they're doing, they're not letting their mind go off in different things. They're applying their mind to one specific focus, whatever the method is, but their breath. Okay? Taoist practice, do the same thing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I guess one way of looking at it would be in some of the Taoist practices, you tend to, I always saw the mind as empowering it, but maybe in some respects, it's actually kind of a middleman getting in the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, okay. We'll just elaborate for probably about 2 minutes on this one point. In Buddhism, you don't see people doing practices like in Taoism, with a standing practice or sitting practice or even the moving practices of the Taoist stuff. But in Buddhism, you have, in all cultivation actually, you have sitting, standing, lying, and walking practice. All application of the mind for concentration on a single thought. When I'm practicing Qigong, in the all this quote-unquote in Taoist practice, I'm not sitting there thinking what I'm going to eat 2 hours later. I'm applying myself to a single thought, which is simply my breath and what I'm doing at the moment. Same thing I do when I sit there in meditation for practice in the quote-unquote Buddhist methods, or if I'm applying on a mantra or recitation in Buddhism or in Taoism as well. So it's still the application of the mind for concentration. This is a similarity. The difference is basically how you want to do it. And it doesn't separate the two, really. The person does, by the discriminating mind. Makes it like, this is much more better because it goes in depth. Well, Buddhism goes in depth as well. It just does. We can go into what it goes in depth to at another time because we really want to cover the different aspects of these two practices.
What about, again, I guess it goes along the lines of absorbing energy, but what about diet? Is there any difference between Buddhist diet versus Taoist diet? And I know I say Taoist, there's so many different schools, and there's crossover between Buddhism and Taoism. Some Taoist schools have Buddhism kind of integrated into them. But generally speaking, are there any dietary differences?
Well, basically, some traditions, generally, some traditions of the Taoists in China, they only stick to vegetarian. If you are a left home person, then you only sticking to vegetarian practices. Um, I think there's a Chuanzhen Pai, the complete reality sect, and the Zhengyi Pai, in English, I forget what it is in English. Sorry, guys. The Zhengyi sect, I guess you can be married, you eat meat, you do whatever you want to a degree, but you still have to stick straight to your practice. You have a family or whatnot. The Chuanzhen sect, when you take the left home precepts for that, you refrain from wine, intoxicants, and sex generally. So um, there's these two different traditions. Generally, the idea is to maintain your energy. So it doesn't mean you just go and have sex in the Zhengyi sect. You just go and have all the sex you want, have all the kids you want, whatever. Eat all the meat and smoke all the cigarettes or drink everything else you want. Just means moderation. Do things very little. You can do it, just do it very little. Don't let it consume your mind. Don't let it consume your body and poison you, basically. Buddhism, if you take precepts, 5 precepts for the layperson, you are also not killing, so that you can translate that also as not enabling the killing to happen. So don't go and eat meat because you enable the butcher to go and chop up the meat for you, and that enables him to have his job as being a butcher, and he can go buy the animal from the farm or whatnot and help the other person kill the animal. So I mean, it's just a whole line down. You can take it that deep if you really want to be pure about your vows. But generally, if you can't hold the vow, don't take it. If it's a problem for you, but you want to persist in your cultivation, take it and make sure, or practice taking it before you actually take it, so you have the skill to actually uphold the vow. Buddhism, basically, you don't eat meat. If you choose to, you refrain from excessive sexual activity unless you've taken the left home vows, and you don't take any, you don't have sex whatsoever. No taking intoxicants of alcohol or cigarettes and whatnot. As a layperson and as a left-home person, these things are very similar to both sects of the Zhengyi sect and the complete reality Chuanzhen sect in China of Taoism.
The complete reality that actually does integrate Buddhism in with the
Yes,
Taoist practices, I believe.
yes,
Okay.
because as the Buddhism and some Confucian ethics as well, for filial piety, respecting your parents, respecting people around you as your parents or as your family. Excuse me. The Buddhist aspect of different sutras, they regard as a very wholesome practice. Certain vows, even Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they take in their practice as well as being cultivators of the way, because they are.
Are there any differences between the Buddhist and Taoist sutras?
I picked up, not picked up, I found some Taoist texts. There was a Heart Sutra, the Heart Stele of Master Lu Dongbing, one of the 8 Immortals. He spoke on something likened to the Heart Sutra. But what I've seen in some of the Taoist texts, the similarity is that they're talking of purification of your mind, purification of your body. This is all in the Buddhist sutras also. Some texts in Taoism speak on methods to practice, and they speak in a language I find almost similar to Chan language, which is riddled, making you have to work for your food, work for your nourishment right there. So there's similarities in some Taoist texts. Now, I'm not very well learned on Taoist texts. I learned through method and practice and guidance in my Taoist practice. So I'm sure we can find someone who's very skilled or well-versed in Taoist text. We can have a comparison later on at some point, possibly.
What about the meditation and sitting practices? Are they essentially the same thing?
Well, when I learned my meditation practices, and then I came to China and met up with a Taoist nun, a left home person who took me as her disciple later on, I explained to her the things that I've learned. She says, I would have taught you those things anyway, just in another language. So I don't have to teach you those things. Pretty much, I'll just guide what you're doing because, you got what I would give you, basically. I said, but a lot of what I do, I also see in Buddhist practice. She goes, because it's cultivation, silly. That's what she would tell me. If I'm sitting in Taoist practice, holding my fingers in a sword posture, and I guess I'm giving everyone a little method here. You put your hand at your dantian, let it sit on your lap in front of your navel. You can hold your middle finger and thumb together and hold your right hand in front of you. Ring finger of the right hand, the pinky finger and the thumb touching, and the two fingers pointing upward, index and middle, right in front of you around your third eye level. Inhale to the fingertips, bring it through the body, to the arms. Well, it goes to the arm, it goes right up to the third eye, and goes down also to the dantian. You can hold that focus there for a while, and there's more to it. But what am I doing there? And someone would say, you're pulling in universal energy. Universal energy is everywhere anyway. There's no separation between Earth and universal energy. It's just the vibration is integrated with each other. So what am I really doing? I'm focusing. I'm concentrating on, I'll use this language. I'm focusing my energy to nourish my crown chakra, nourish the pituitary gland, pineal gland, sorry, nourish my abdomen and the organs inside there, and I guess some would like this word, quote unquote, charging up the dantian or nourishing the field, basically. And in the Buddhist, how I would comment on that with the Buddhist outlook, for the sake of saying outlook, just, don't quote me on this. I'm just simply concentrating my breath on one single point while everything else does the work for me, basically.
So it's, I guess the main difference then, as I see it, is Taoist has a lot of many kind of focused intentions, whereas Buddhism has, I hate to say this, but a more universal look on it, and it just kind of lets nature take its course.
Kind of like this. You make a plate of food, and I'll make a plate of food, and we make the flavors totally different, but if we eat it, we're still getting full.
That's a good way of putting it. All right.
Eventually, one of our practices is going to get both of us to where the practice is supposed to get us, as long as we have the right guidance.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on, Len?
Well, basically, when we're looking at Buddhism and Taoism, and there's a lot of fighting on, there's a lot of comparisons in the world about what Buddhism does and what Taoism does and what they both don't do. They're cultivation practices, let's keep in mind. And what does that mean? That means we're trying to stop our false thinking. We're trying to stop how much we're attaching to things, quote unquote, external to us. And all the views that we create about these sensations we associate ourselves with, or associate what we consider to be a self with. All these things take from us. In Buddhism, we call them outflows. In Taoism, we'll call them leaking, Things leak, energy leaks out from us. We want to stop those up. Qigong helps to stop those up. But what is Qigong? Breath work. When you're meditating, whether it's in Buddhism or Taoism, what are you doing? You're breathing. So it's breath work already. And as long as we maintain practice, we stop up those leaks. We block them up, but not block in a negative way. We realize that wherever energy is leaking from, wherever we're making outflows go to, wherever they're coming from our eyes, our ears, or wherever, we stop it. We pull the energy back and we bring it in, and we illuminate us. Eventually, we can awaken to some wisdom. And along the line, who knows, you may gain an ability here and there. You may become a little bit more, I'll just use these terms for the sake of our conversation, psychic, clairvoyant. You may develop healing abilities. You may be able to, who knows, if you're really good at what you do and that's all you're doing is the practice, you may be able to appear and reappear somewhere. You know, who knows? Maybe you run across treetops without, falling off the tree. Who knows what happens? Things just happen, but they're not something to look towards as a marker that says, I attained it and I got it. No, leave it alone. It'll come because you're applying your mind. As long as you're applying your mind to the proper method, meaning you apply your mind to the method that brings you wisdom, everything else is inevitable. It'll happen. So,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the markers because I know a lot of people that I've talked to before. They want those markers. It's like they need the confirmation, and
right, and that's
I feel almost seems like they're setting themselves up for disappointment.
yes, it's an ego. You're saying that an I wants to attain a something, and I want to bring it upon a self, which is my self, and therefore I will be better or I will be stronger than if those who do it to help others. I can go and help other people with it. There's a lot of I going on in there, and that's really the barrier between you, the quote unquote you, and everybody else. We want to destroy these four views: self, others, personality, lifespan. You want to take these views out, throw them out. They're useless unless you're not cultivating and don't care. Um, they're useless for you as a practitioner of the cultivation of the way. They stop you, whether it's a Taoist practice or the Buddhist practice. Um, they'll just stop you. So, main focus: just bring everything to one point. Don't worry about everything else on the sidelines, which is spiritual powers or oh, I got a little wisdom, let me go teach somebody. Don't do that. Got a little wisdom, hold it. Cultivate it more, refine it more. You'll know when it's truly ready. Then you will know when you should open your mouth and speak whatever principle you got. The time will be right eventually. Some people got a little bit and they want to go out and become well known, have students write a book, and be revered somehow or some way. It's not really necessary. You got a little bit, hold it. Don't tell anybody. Let it just be with you. That's good. There's no need to go rush and let people know what you got, because once you let them know, it's stolen. It's gone. You let the door open and boom, the dog runs out. You want to keep the dog inside. Nourish it. Keep it strong. Keep it quiet. Keep it warm. Don't let the mind run all over the place. When it's time, you will know in your heart. It doesn't have to be this, I got this really good feeling, I got to go out and find a student, or I got to go out and let people know what I got. Let me write some articles. Let me write a book. Let me go, talk and do lectures and whatnot. It'll come to you on its own. Students will come to you on their own. The quote-unquote being well-known will come on its own. The being well-known isn't such a great thing. Just because you're well-known doesn't mean you're rich, doesn't mean everyone else gets full, doesn't mean everyone else's problems are well and done with, even if you got a method to give them. No, there's no guarantee someone is going to get ahead with what you give them. That's why, for me, I tell people, don't believe anything I tell you. If it makes sense to you, then you're believing in yourself because you agree that what I've said makes sense to you. And it's something in you that it clicks with. So it already was yours. I'm just reiterating what you already know, what you already feel is right for you. It's not my problem that you choose to take it. It's my problem of telling you about it. So if I tell someone about something in practice and they go and do the wrong thing, I got the worst responsibility in the world. I got to be so careful. So if even a person I met 10 years ago, I haven't talked to for 10, 12 years maybe, decides to come around and ask a question, hey, I got this question, I haven't talked to you in a long time. I wouldn't ask him, why didn't you contact me? I don't care. I just care that if he got somewhere on the wrong way, hopefully I can try to right the wrong, because it may have been my problem. Who knows, maybe it wasn't my problem, but, you don't want to be so arrogant, because that itself would influence that person to go the wrong way too. So in both practices of Buddhism and Taoism, it's really cultivation. Don't take it for the superficial. Don't even take it for the profound. Take it where there's no discrimination going on in your mind. And then you really find what they're all about. You don't know a person until you're really with that person for a long time. Same thing with anything else in the world.
Well, it's it's really a vast topic, and again, all we can attempt to do in the short time we have allotted is just scratch the surface.
Yeah.
But going forward, we can explore a lot of these topics we've touched upon, further in depth. So that having been said, I'd like to thank you for enlightening us again with your time, Len.
Oh, I hope it was worth something.
All right, so we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Expedient Means with Lin A. Wei on Time Monk Radio. Please be sure to join us next week as we investigate sexual practices. To quote the final chapter of the Tao Te Ching, the sage does not accumulate. The more he assists others, the more he possesses. The more he gives to others, the more he gains.